Thank you, Dr. Petros. You did me a kindness. It has not been necessarily recently since I've been here. I graduated here in 2008, School of Civil Engineering. Also, bear with me, I am not a public speaker. This is actually probably the biggest group of people, or at least close to it, that I've ever spoken to. So it may take me, a couple minutes to get into it. I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience, how I ended up at Pitt, what happened after that. I'm not a sociologist. Like I said, I was an engineer. I now, with a couple partners, own a marketing company. We specialize in selling products to people. So we do spend a lot of time thinking about what motivates people to make decisions and why they make the decisions they make. And we spend a lot of time thinking about the type of people that we market to and what those people respond to. So I'm hoping I can give a little bit of insight, both from a business perspective and incentives and rewards in that sense, but maybe even hopefully in the marketing sense of like what actually motivates people to do things and what doesn't necessarily work. So I grew up in Newcastle, Pennsylvania. It's about an hour north of here. In 2004, I graduated high school. I moved to Pittsburgh. At the time, Pittsburgh seemed like the promised land to me compared to Newcastle. Our favorite thing to do in Newcastle was to go to Dunkin' Donuts and sit outside and not buy anything. So coming to Pittsburgh was like a huge growth opportunity for me. The Pitt that I went to didn't look this nice. I think I was kind of at the end of the older era where everything was kind of dingy. The engineering school was like unrecognizable from the last time I was here. So this seems like Pitt is like an awesome experience, even better than when I was here. I decided to be a civil engineer because I didn't know what else to be. I was decent at math as a kid, so I decided that I would continue that, Pitt Engineering. And I spent about 4 years there. I didn't necessarily work all that hard or go to a lot of classes. It's tough. I don't know how old everyone is here, probably 18 to 22, obviously. It's really hard to pick what you want to be for the rest of your life when you're 18 or 22. So kind of went through the motions, got a career in civil engineering, worked in construction management, structural design, kind of hopped around, did estimating for a few years. A lot of really boring stuff that doesn't have anything to do with people, that just has to do with sort of sitting in a corner and doing math on a computer. So very different than what we're going to talk about today. Engineering is a great field if you're really interested in engineering. If you're not sure about what you want to be, engineering may be not the best choice. So I spent about 10 years as an engineer. In the meantime, I did a graduate degree in business at Indiana University. I really wanted to get out of engineering. I was really much more interested in people and how people make decisions and how they operate day to day in the real world. One thing I realized when I was in college is you don't really understand how things work as well as you do maybe when you have some experience. So I was really confused by things because I was an engineer. I was kind of a dork. I really wanted to understand how people worked and what motivated people. So with no experience in marketing at all, I decided to start a marketing company, more specifically an Amazon business that sold other people's products. But let me take a step back. So our company now, it was mine at the time, it's called Granitsa E-commerce Solutions. So you'll see here the word Granitsa at the top here. So the business is inspired by a town called Granitsa. It's in central Greece, as you can see right here. When you see pictures of Greece, people are going on vacation, on their honeymoons. They don't go to this spot. So they're typically in Athens, in these islands over here, maybe these islands on this side. To get to this part of Greece, a lot of it is still only accessible by dirt roads. This is the town that my mother and my mother's family is from. My father's family lives about an hour away, although it's only 8 miles away. He came from the same region. So both of my parents come from this very remote region of Greece. My mother's village at this point has 550 people in it, and I think that's generous from the time that I visited there. My father's village at this point has like 15 people in it. Did not have running water, did not have electricity. So when we're talking about wealth and power, like my parents started from zero, like literally no wealth and no power. So it's very interesting to chart their trajectory up until they got here and beyond. So in 1966, there was a major earthquake in that area. My mother's home was destroyed. My father had already moved away from that area. He ran away from home when he was 13. He had moved to Athens as a teenager, kind of slept outside for a year, ended up getting some work, ended up graduating high school on his own time in night school. My mother was a little bit younger. She moved to Athens because the government assisted them in moving because their house was destroyed. My father's family also received similar assistance. They moved to the same town. When my father was visiting his family, met my mom, and in 1975, they decided to move to America. 10 years later, I was born, and here we are. So a lot of the motivation for me to succeed and to be something, maybe make a difference in people's lives comes from sort of that background. So I think it's important for me to share that with you. So let's talk about the business. So Granitza started off as a reselling company. We would buy these products at a discount. We would list them on Amazon. I'm sure a lot of you have seen this, it's very popular on TikTok these days. I was doing this 7 years ago before it was popular, before there was a TikTok. What we realized was this wasn't really a very profitable business. You're making a couple cents to a couple dollars on each of these products. There's a lot of hidden costs. This is a storage unit that I was renting at the time. As you can see, very humble. I think all I had was a printer and a laptop and a dustpan, it looks like. So, out of this sort of seed grew kind of what Granitza is today. So the first step we did was we actually moved into a bigger warehouse. So when you don't have employees, you just recruit your family and your cousins to come pose in t-shirts with a bunch of boxes. So that's what this picture is. This is when we moved into our first warehouse. We became a wholesale seller. So we were actually buying products directly from manufacturers by truckloads. We were selling them by truckloads. And, pretty decent business at that time. That type of business has also now kind of the margins have shrunk so much that it wasn't worth it. So out of sort of the seeds of that grew two different businesses. One of them was a third-party logistics, which this picture kind of shows the warehouse where we still operate, although we have since closed that third-party logistics business. But the real business that we were able to grow out of this is a business services consulting business. So what we do now is we have clients. So we work with brands and companies, and they hire us to help them sort of identify how they can build their brand and how they could sell more products online. So our specialties are, Amazon, Walmart are the biggest online marketplaces right now. Probably 90% of sales are on those two sites. And then we also help, in limited instances, setting up Shopify and brand stores as well. Absolutely. So I'm sure, as everyone knows, Amazon is problematic as a business in some ways, especially in their anti-competitive behavior. One thing that they've really done in a positive way is they've given a pretty easy way to get national distribution for small businesses and brands that are just launching. So in the past, you had to call Target or call Walmart, get a meeting with somebody, pitch them your idea. Hopefully they decide to carry it. They'll negotiate your price down to a point where you may not make any money. And it was the barrier to entry was extremely high. Now that the internet exists, in the early 2010s, Amazon opened up a marketplace where literally anybody, including anybody in this room, could open up a brand or a store and sell a product that they made. So what we do is we help companies that either exist already, they have brick and mortar locations, or they have an online presence, but they don't really know what they're doing. We also help companies that are launching new brands. At this point in time, Amazon is clearly, in my opinion, the best place to launch a new product. There's a built-in audience. I don't know the exact number, but it's over 100 million users a day visit Amazon. So if you want people to see your product, it's definitely the best way, at least on day one. It's where you need to focus your most energy. So that's why a lot of our energy is on Amazon businesses. Walmart is up and coming. We expect them to take 10 to 15% of that market. And then obviously, brands have to sell and have presence on their own website as well. So we have a team of 5 people at Granitza. Hopefully we'll be 6 by the end of the year. There's a lot of different parts of the business that require expertise. One person probably is not capable of understanding every part of this kind of business. So my job, in addition to being the team leader, I am like the math side of things. I still get to use my engineering background. So I do PPC advertising, keyword ranking, competitor analysis, data analytics and reporting, all that fun stuff. Manoli, who's in the room in the back, he's our creative director. So, there's the 50% of marketing that's math, and there's the 50% that's creative. And the creative is, in the end, when it resonates, is the thing that makes the most difference. And then the rest of our team is very much like client support and Amazon backend support. So any issues that come up, any products we need to add, any images, copy, title we need to upload, our support team helps with all that stuff. So I'm going to give you a very short version of our value because it kind of ties in with how we are generating power and wealth, hopefully. And that is by creating value for our clients. So we have clients that are typically small businesses, maybe a medium-sized business, up to $50 million in revenue a year. And these companies don't have a lot of room for mistakes. They have to get it right on their first try. So they hire us to make sure that they don't screw it up pretty much. So we take them through our process. Our process is much longer than this, but this is it distilled into one slide. There's the creative, and there's the, what we'll call the quantitative. You design something that converts, that sells, that motivates people to buy, and then you figure out a way to identify those people and send them to the listing pages where they could make those purchases. The other value we add is in data analytics and reporting. So one of the big complaints that companies have is they have no idea how their performance is, how they're performing, if they're making money or not. You'd be surprised how big companies are kind of a mess inside. So what we try to do is show them a very clear picture of what we're trying to do, if it's working or not, if we're meeting our goals, and if we're not, how do we make adjustments quickly?
Rewards and frustration.
Absolutely. So, when I was a young person, we'll put it that way, I always thought money motivated everything, but it's much more complicated than that. So, I was in engineering. It's very, you take all these classes, you're going to get a good job, and your life is going to be great, which can be true, and it is true probably for most people. What I realized is that for me, money wasn't maybe the most important thing. So I wanted to work with people that I liked. So one thing that was a huge surprise is like kind of how miserable a lot of people are that have to work full time. The other big surprise is like you think you're going to work with and have like mentors and have like really awesome people to lead you. And the one thing I realized is that leadership is lacking, and good management is kind of hard to find. So for me, I spent a lot of years just like really frustrated. Just like I felt like my career was going nowhere. I felt like my manager didn't even know I was there. I had no growth path. And what I realized is like, yeah, when you're in school, you have like this calendar and these classes that you want to take. But when you're out in the real world, you just have to like sort of build your own process and your own calendar and really learn how to navigate it in a way that you can like show your strengths. And maybe that doesn't fit in with like what other people want you to be. As far as rewards, money is definitely a huge thing. But what I've realized, especially now that I lead a team, what people really want as much as money, and maybe some people want even more, especially high ambition people, is sort of an opportunity to be fulfilled, to do work that matters. So for me and my team, like we can't offer the highest salaries because we're a young company. We didn't raise money, not yet at least. So for me, like I have to provide people an opportunity to like be the best version of themselves, and that's trusting them way more than I'm comfortable with, which I think a lot of people kind of fall short in that. Not micromanaging and just like allowing excellent people to be excellent.
You also miss out on other things they can bring to the table. Good.
Yeah, I think the main thing is like you could do everything you're supposed to and still end up miserable. You could have a high-paying job, you could have a high title, and you could still be miserable. Yeah. So there's a lot more motivation than just money for sure. And the other thing about capitalism is it doesn't necessarily work as well as you think. I think almost every company is sort of a mess behind the curtain. Big corporations more so than small ones sometimes. And that's, I think, the reason why you always see, no matter how much money and power a huge corporation has, there's always a small company that's able to innovate and beat them almost through all of history, that's been true. To add to that, I think if people have meaningful work that they know is going to produce a meaningful result, then they're willing to work longer. To the point where maybe an outsider may think it's not fair, but for that person, like that, it brings so much meaning to their life that they are willing to like put that time into it. We were talking a little bit about like motivations and kind of what I've learned since college. And the one thing that I've learned, especially since I started a marketing business, is that everything is marketing. So like the local news, the national news, I mean, almost everything that isn't like an academic journal is a form of marketing and is trying to convince you of something. And the one thing about marketing is that it almost always works. There is no like human defense to good marketing. And the only defense is to turn it off. And that took me like 15 years to figure out. And I had to actually start a marketing company to understand, how that all works. Yeah, it can go wrong for sure. And it, as you can see, especially in politics, can go really sideways. I mean, it's really up to the individual. Like, what does it mean to be ethical? It's like like with our brands, we're very selective about who we work with. And we work with people who are trying to sell a product that people actually need. And we don't take on manipulative types of products like weight loss supplements. We actually don't even take on beauty brands because it makes me feel kind of nauseous. So it's really, that comes down to like the individual, like what can you stomach as far as what you're selling and how far are you willing to go into the darkness to sell that product. And like I could tell you on our team, we're not willing to go that far, but like that's a really difficult question because as you add power and wealth, that becomes much harder to fight against. Actually, I was going to say one more thing. I actually agree with the statement that marketing and branding is one of our, probably the biggest export of American history. Yeah, go to the Andy Warhol Museum, you'll see a lot of that. See, I think that Tesla is always marketing and is really good at it. So let me put it a different way. So like Elon Musk gets all this credit for being a good engineer. I actually think he's a much better marketer than an engineer. Like shooting a car into space is a marketing tactic. And just getting people to talk about him all the time is brilliant marketing. So yes, I agree that other companies should approach marketing in that kind of way because I think it works way better. But I do disagree that they're not marketing. Just because they're not spending money on ads, everybody on Reddit, Twitter, like is constantly talking about either Elon Musk or Tesla. Anytime Elon Musk goes on TV, everyone watches it. So like, I actually think he's one of the most gifted marketers that's alive right now. And the trick of really good marketing is to make you think that it's not marketing. There's a lot of mistakes that people make. One of them is like, one of the key mistakes that we see is someone trying to like oversell their product. So now that you're online, back when I was a little kid, like you would go to Sears, there would be like 5, 6 products there. The salesman would tell you which one was good and you would buy one. That doesn't really work anymore. Like I know everything about a product. I know how much it sold for, last week. I know the reviews. I know what people think about it. So everything is very transparent in a way that it wasn't before. So, the mistake that we see sometimes is people try to oversell it. They try to say that there's features on their product that either don't work right or don't exist at all, benefits and features. So for me, like, just be honest and spend your money on product development and really like building a quality product that people want. And then the marketing sort of works on its own, as long as it's high quality. You can't really deceive consumers anymore in the way that people used to. At least not with products. Where we do see a lot of embellishment is in services still. So a lot of our competitors will kind of embellish the results that they get. So you'll see our competitors post things like increase sales by 5 million% or some ridiculous number. And we try to stay away from that because that's a good way to piss a lot of people off. Yeah, so I spent a lot of time like with my team in a bunker pretty much, in a warehouse, figuring out how to market other people's products. And now, like just this year, we've tried to figure out how to market ourselves and grow past like our small business phase. So for us, like reputation is number one. So in the same way that a product has reviews, like we have a reputation. So like people won't hire us for high dollar value contracts unless we have like 3 or 4 other people willing to like vouch for our performance. So a big part of that is like case studies, just having people willing to like jump on a phone call and talk to your new, sales lead and vouch for you. That's a big part of it. What we're still trying to figure out, and as you can see, there's a camera back here. We're trying to figure out how do we get people to even know that we exist. And that's sort of a different marketing problem that we haven't quite solved yet. We have been just putting out a ton of content on TikTok and Instagram, and that seems to be getting some traction. But up until now, people have found us on LinkedIn through referrals and word of mouth, and that's really where we've made our money so far. Yeah, that's a good question, because I think your generation is going to be way higher percentage of self-employed than mine. So it's a good question. So for me, like, it's just about listening to yourself and knowing yourself. I know it sounds kind of silly to say, but like, for me, like, I didn't find my path until I just like shut everyone else off and just like was listening to what I actually wanted to do with my life. So for me, it's like definitely wouldn't quit college. I wouldn't graduate and start a business. I don't know if that's a great idea, but I would definitely like find somebody that you could learn from, whether that's like a really good company, like a specific person that like works for a company, you would work for them. I wish I would have had like a mentor, like a person that I respected and that respected me, that could like cultivate my growth. And I never even thought to look for that. It was always like find the highest paying job. And that was like the end of the discussion. Yeah, let me put it this way. I worked for 10 years in engineering. I worked for companies managing pretty big construction projects. When I started my business, it ran out of money several times to the point where I couldn't get paid. So like, even though I had 10 years experience, it was still such a difficult challenge that I barely survived it. At least the company barely survived it. So for me, it's like, unless you have a really big safety net to fall back on, I don't necessarily recommend starting a business unless it's something like you're extremely passionate about. Like for me, I think it might be my only option, because like what I realized is that it wasn't that engineering was boring. It was that I couldn't work in an office in front of a computer and listen to somebody that I didn't want to listen to. So like, not everyone is going to have that. Like I think most people probably are happier just having a good manager and a good company to work for. So I don't necessarily want to push people towards business. It was the right decision for me. And if you're really passionate about it, like, definitely go for it. But it does help to have some experience. And even with experience, you still may not succeed, at least on your first try. The other thing I've realized, like, there's a lot of people out there that have a ton of resources that I don't have or I didn't have. So keep that in mind too. So you may see people starting their businesses online, but they may be getting income from somewhere else that you don't know about.
So obviously you said that you were a civil engineering major.
Yeah.
Did people like doubt your ability to create your business based off of a marketing platform, like, given your degree?
Yes. Mainly my mom and dad. Actually, mainly my mom. No, people thought I was crazy, and I probably was a little bit. But, you just have to kind of keep going until it works out. And I feel like I'm giving you guys like some trite philosophy here, but for me, it was like when everyone else is saying you can't do it, or even when I'm telling myself I couldn't do it, I just had to keep going, because I put myself in a position where I couldn't give up at that point. I don't know if that answers your question.
You obviously like picked like something like engineering like while you were young, and then realized like you transferred over to something like marketing. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
How'd you decide like in the middle, I guess, of your career that like that was your calling and it wasn't engineering anymore?
I think I was just in a really desperate situation where I was like in almost like a depression over my career, and I just like could not continue anymore. So for me, it was like I actually went on Reddit and was like trying to figure out ways to make money. So for me, it was like completely out of like desperation, not out of like a master plan. So it was like, I'm gonna just try to do something and see where it goes. And that's why you saw like we tried like 3 or 4 business models before we finally found one that actually like brings a ton of value to people.
So this is sort of like maybe in a different lane of the questions that have already been asked, but as someone who's a marketer, is there any product you can think of that if you see its marketing, you think, wow, that just stinks. You could do a lot better.
All the time.
And, like, would there be sort of, what would be the biggest example of that for you?
Yeah, so you have to think of like small businesses or small brands or new brands, like they have a product and they think it's like their baby, and it's hard to call someone's baby ugly sometimes. But they can't look at their own product sometimes subjectively. So what they think the customer wants is not actually what the customer is looking for. So what we do is like, here's your actual features that people are shopping for, because we could see what keywords they're looking at. So it's like people are searching for these keywords, like these are the important things. So I think people make a mistake. They're a little overconfident sometimes. It's tough because you have to be overconfident to launch a product because it's very capital intensive to launch and buy all this inventory. I have sympathy, but that's the biggest mistake, is like not knowing your customer. So when people started referring us to other people and like recommending us, I had people reach out and offer to like talk about us for free. Like usually people ask money for it, but I had people that we had worked with in the past that were like, hey, I have a friend or I have a colleague that's starting this thing, like you need to talk to them. That's when I realized like we were onto something, and at that point we just shut everything else down and just like are now focusing on that. I could tell you that I don't look at that stuff at all. I have people on my team that are college graduates. I have people on my team that didn't go to college at all. So for me, I mean, it's tough because like you don't know. I've hired people that didn't work out and they had the same qualifications as people that did. So for me, it's like, I'm gonna hire somebody, I'm gonna give them a chance. And if they prove that they can do it, we just keep going.
We try to talk about skill set. What can you do in addition to the creative vision and input and contribution you can make? Skill sets more than what your degree is in. Would you agree with that?
For sure.
More important than
Yeah, I do. It is much more important. I think one thing that's even more important than that is like how people view themselves. So like for me, I want someone that like respects themselves enough to like want to do better. And a lot of people don't fall in that boat. So I was probably one of those people for a long time where I was just like, this job sucks. Like I'm gonna collect my paycheck and go home.
you look at it and say, would I hire myself?
I would not have hired myself when I was 25, for sure. No. But like for me now, I can tell like if someone's like willing to put in the time to learn, if they come prepared. Actually, the number one thing I do is if I'm teaching someone and they pull a notebook out and write stuff down, that's like the number one thing where I'm like, all right, this person's serious. And I would say like 80% of people don't write anything down when they're being trained. So for me, it's like I just wait to see what I'm getting back from people before I make that judgment. There's a lot of educated people that don't really want to work hard. And I'm not saying everyone should have to work hard or should want to work hard, but for our small team, like we can't afford to have like slackers, I guess. So it becomes very important. Yeah, that's an interesting question that I don't have the right. I don't have the answer to that question. I can tell you that there's a lot of untalented people that make a lot of money. And there's a lot of people that are pretty high up in big companies that are not talented at all. So don't feel like these people are like unattainable or unreachable, because I met a lot of people that make a lot of money that I wouldn't do business with. Thank you. Thanks for having me.